Your favorite toy truck nerds are back. Welcome to That Scale RC Show.
Thanks for being here.
How's it going?
How's it going?
This is episode 132, and a couple weeks ago was thinking about all the people that I know in the RC world that happen to be F1 fans too. So we've got Haley, you might know her as RC Girl.
Hello.
She has been quite the world traveler here like the last 2 years now. Like this season and the previous season, she's gone to a couple rounds. We've got Aaron Lane here, who
How's it going?
is actually, I'll wait and let you guys kind of explain what all you do here. We've got Aaron Lane, Thad Garner, and Tony Phalen, and all of these guys are either involved or really big fans of F1 and at an RC level. So anyways, hi guys, thanks for being here. All right, so Adam, what's new? You've been a busy guy lately.
Busy as far as work, not really so much RC stuff. We did, I can't remember the last time we recorded if we did the redo of the NorCal We Rock event. Did we go over that? We had the first one, and we had like 40
remember doing the first one for sure.
Okay, so we had like 40 people show up on the first one, and it was just so confusing. There were so many DNFs that it was just like we kind of chalked it up as a wash, and then we redid the event about 2 weeks later, and actually you handed out trophies for first, second, and third in both classes. So the second time around was a lot better. The courses were a lot more doable. We had a more of a competition based setup of like drivers that showed up versus like just everybody coming out to see what it was about. So it kind of naturally thinned the herd a little bit, but it was still good. We still had over, we had like 15, 16 different drivers. So it was still good. And in that area, we have the next real big event is going to be actually at Moonrocks in July. I believe that's like the 25th and 26th. It's a Friday and a Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, because they're actually doing We Rock Live is actually hosting their round 3 is going to be there. So Elio had that was his idea to just be like, hey, we're going to have the 1-to-1 doing their thing on the rocks, and then we're going to have the scale version right next to them doing the same thing. So
I didn't know they ran 1-to-1 stuff at that same location. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Moonrocks. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's cool.
So so he's gearing up for that, and we actually have a Scale Challenge West event coming up on the 26th of this month, so the last weekend of April. I believe it's going to be at Folsom. He's going to go scout some places, but for sure it's going to happen on the 26th.
Rad.
So, and that's about it.
Right on. Trav, you haven't really got a lot going on with any RC stuff at the moment.
No.
So wrapped up with work and everything, we've been lucky to even be able to get you on the show. So
Yeah, probably.
thank you for that at least.
Yeah, due for a day to make sure everything runs and get out, because I only have another week and a half at this fulfillment center, and then I'll have a couple weeks of downtime. So hopefully get out to Red Rocks before too long here. Hopefully before the end of April. That's the goal.
All right. Well, let's start with Aaron. You want to introduce yourself, kind of give a background of what you've been doing in the RC industry all this time, and then just kind of what you've been up to currently.
Sure. My name's Aaron Lane. I've been in the RC hobby for probably 25 years, ever since I was a kid. My dad got me into it. Spent a lot of time racing as a kid. Raced in college, got a mechanical engineering degree. Spent a few years designing 1-to-1 side-by-sides. got a call from Cliff Lett asking about a position at Associated, and couldn't have said yes fast enough. Spent 7 years at Associated as a design engineer, then towards the end transitioned more to like an engineering manager role. Did that, had a lot of life changes, had a daughter, family's growing, decided it was in our best interest to move away from the RC hobby as a full-time gig, and landed a job at Toyota Racing Development, where I currently work on NASCAR Cup engines in the design department. Now my RC hobby it's a hobby. So I was gifted UF1, the racing series from Tony Phalen. At the time, I thought it was a gift. Little did I know.
I told you.
It was not a gift. It was like the evil genie in a bottle. But so I run that racing series. That's primarily focused on 10th scale Formula One cars. And then between that downtime, I design my own stuff. 3D printers are great now, and Etsy is super easy. So my wife helps me run an Etsy store where, if I make something in a tool tray or wheels or whatever, we throw it on there and have a couple hobby stores that distribute the stuff, and just sort of enjoy the hobby now.
That's rad.
Nice.
Are you enjoying it more now that it's like kind of, like a hobby business versus, I mean, it was pretty much 24/7 practically for you before with, work and then your recreational involvement too.
Yeah. I mean, I do enjoy the hobbyist side of it. At heart, I am still a racer. That's what I grew up doing as a kid. As a sponsored racer by, Low-C and then Team Associated.
Oh, wow.
So my mindset is always there. My time at Team Associated was actually focused mostly on RTRs. So it's a very contrasting mindset. But being focused more on the hobby, having a kid now, your mentality is a little different. The things you can get done in a week without a kid takes you 3 months, and you just have to learn, patience and acceptance. And so things are just, a different pace, and that's just how it is. And, it's working out.
Yeah, that's rad. Right on. Well, Thad, nice to, this is kind of like the closest we've ever had to meeting. So hello.
I think so. Yes. Hello. About myself, I've been in the industry a long time. I started out at HPI Racing. I was there for probably about 19 years. From there, I went to Team Associated, and I was there for about 4 years. I worked with alongside Aaron, and currently I'm at R1 Wurks, and I've been there for almost 2 years. Doing product design. On the racing side of things, I think early on in my career, I raced a lot more than I do now. It's more of just being burned out. So for me, even when I started running F1, it was more of like I was going to run once a month, which is perfect because that's what the series runs. And that's kind of enough for me now to where I don't get burned out. But.
Nice. Now you, I think everybody's probably noticed a pretty radical shift in R1's product lineup after you came on board, because before, they were kind of just known for their electronics, and then now you've got all kinds of incredible looking option parts, a lot of stuff for the associated cars, of course. So is that that kind of a lot of your influence there? Or?
Yeah, when I started there, motors, electronics, batteries, stuff like that. And then they had the drag car, but definitely brought in just my knowledge from everywhere else I worked to pretty much just crank out and build their option part line, which we continue to do. But yeah, we've definitely expanded our product line in the last year.
Dude, stuff looks so good too. Like,
Thanks.
it's really nice looking stuff.
A lot of that comes from the owner, Steve. He allows a lot of flexibility and creativity with the design, so you're not so much confined into a box with
That's nice.
making stuff simple. You make stuff as cool as you possibly can.
Right. Well, I mean, it's kind of in good hands too, with what you do and everything. I mean, you know how things need to look and how something looks attractive to a hobbyist, not just, like, because there's certain things that people that design parts or do graphic design or anything like that, there's like certain things that we think look really good. And then there's like the things that you kind of have to do that you don't necessarily want to do to dress it up for the public, like whether it's multiple colors or whatever. So, it's kind of, it's an interesting predicament to be in. So, I mean, you've definitely like found that balance, and like, I think another brand that does a good job of that is like the factory team stuff at AE, like it's not too over the top with like, the beveled edges that aren't anodized and things like that, and like to where it looks like Energy or somebody's product, it's like you got to find that like balance. And so it's I don't know, stuff like that. It's like I can appreciate, how those things look. So
yeah, a lot of that is just also worked into the brand recognition of
right.
Start that precedent, say factory team, for example, and the reducing of post-op chamfering and things, and just randomly starting that again for a line and then stopping it for another one because the vendor may change or production needs to be changed, confuses the customer.
Right.
So luckily Thad for sure has one of the best eyes as far as like design language. First passes with Thad were always like pretty much money. Like there's very little like, this looks dumb, redo this. Like, never.
Is that a hard conversation to have with people? Because like when you're drawing something up, no matter what it is, I mean, and this kind of goes for just about anything, but I mean, some people get super, super passionate and married to something, sometimes for not the best reasons. And this is something that Travis and I've had, kind of gone back and forth with throughout things that we've worked on together, where like I'll be just super adamant about something, and then he'll kind of just point out like, you're being kind of like weird and emotional over something that doesn't need to be this way.
We can't fire each other, so we get to have a lot more candid conversations than an engineering stand-up would probably have.
It took us a while to where it was like we could like, more so him being able to critique me and me not take it personally, because of the amount of effort that does go in.
I mean, honestly, I think a lot of my, I'm not going to say success at Associated was, I liked getting into the nitty gritty of pricing and negotiations on tooling and mold tooling packages. Thad was really good at design, and like he wanted to design. So let's do what we, not are good at, but what we want to be focused on. And then there were some employees moving around, and a lot was happening then at Associated, and I think that's just kind of where it happened, how it happened. But
I think going back to the difficulty of telling someone that something they made sucks, it wasn't so much so an issue at, let's say, Associated, because you do have, like Aaron said, like a design language, so everything kind of has a look and it looks the same. What would be more of like an industrial design or artistic look at a product is more personal, and you don't really have that freedom when you're, confined to a design language or even manufacturing or costs. So if you want to really, let's say, machine apart how you want to do it, it might, it'll cost too much. You can't do it. So you just kind of start skipping those steps and the stuff just kind of looks like everything else. That's where kind of like at R1, I have complete freedom to just kind of do whatever I think how it should look, and not worry so much about costs or anything like that, up to a certain point, obviously. But
these are a lot of like net new items, right? So like the design philosophy is like still sort of taking shape.
yeah.
I see.
You guys do a lot of the manufacturing though in-house too, right?
We do, yeah. Yeah, we have the ability pretty much to at least do full prototyping or as close to final production, like representation of the product, to test the product out before we go to production, which helps.
That is awesome.
That's a huge help.
I have a question for you guys. I once was talking to the owner of Vanquish. It was it was Steve, the guy that no one really talks to very often. And he and I were talking about ideas, whether it's like for product or a look of something or whatever. And one of the pieces of advice that he had given me was, don't pay attention to what everybody else is doing. Just kind of focus on what you want to do, how you want it to look and everything. And that way you're not getting like influenced from any outside sources, And so he said that that's kind of like the key to like being happy with what you're doing and making it work and being kind of like authentic to yourself and authentic to like the brand that you're trying to build. And so with you guys, like you, for example, Thad, do you stay away from following companies like One Up or Avid or Exotech, or do you do you keep up on like kind of what your peers in the industry are doing, or do you purposely stay away from things like that so that doesn't influence the way things look that you come up with?
I pay attention to it. As far as like what you're saying, I usually will take that direction and then look after I've made it and made the part and see what they did, and then you start second guessing yourself. But that definitely does, it doesn't help come up with like a new way of doing something when you do the research into like what everyone else has done, for sure. For me, it's more of looking at the market and seeing what people are focused on, to know kind of what direction to go into or what hasn't been done yet,
Proud. Okay. Good to know. So Haley, this is your third time with us, I think now.
I know, it's funny. I think I was on one of your like episode 8 or something. It was in the
yeah, way back. And then I think you were also our very first video episode, if I remember right, too.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah,
sometime last year, a couple months, I guess 6 months ago, maybe, something like that. Awesome.
So you're always up to a lot, but you've been up to a lot. A
little bit. I mean, as it relates to RC and F1, somewhat I've been involved in stuff for a little bit. I guess I can do an intro. I'm RC Girl. I have a YouTube channel focused on RC reviews, tutorials, unboxings, tips and tricks. I launched a hobby shop tour series a couple years ago, and it's been fun and successful. And I feel like anytime I travel, I try to visit local shops and video and interview people and kind of check out. I don't know. It's a good opportunity to find instant friends when you're traveling to somewhere you've never been. And as it relates to F1, last year I went to my first F1 race in Barcelona, which was really, really fun. I built a scale replica, 1/10 scale Tamiya F104 of Carlos Sainz's car his last year with Ferrari, and brought it to the Barcelona circuit. Got some pictures of the scale one on the track. They let you on the track at the end of the race. And then last month went to the Australian Grand Prix at Albert Park Circuit, and didn't build another car, but I went to one of the hobby shops that was local in Melbourne, and it's been around for like 78 years. So one of the oldest hobby shops, I think, in the country there. So it was fun to do that while I was there. Yeah.
You met James Knight, hung out with him for a bit.
Yeah, it was so fun. So he moved. He originally lived in California, I think, for like 20 years. Originally from England, but his wife lives in Australia. And I think during COVID or something, he moved back to Australia, and it happened to be in Melbourne. He actually recommended the shop, Hearn's Hobbies, that I toured. And yeah, we got to meet up, and he's made a 1/10 scale RC Girl driver figure. So that was fun. He brought in a bunch of his figurines that he's designed. I got to see some of his new stuff and just catch up. Yeah, he took me. It's funny because he's the only person I know that has built a RC 1/10 scale Jeep and then bought a full-size Jeep and made it look like his 1/10 scale RC version. Usually people do it the other way around. So,
well, what's kind of funny too is like when he was in the US, he was a Toyota guy, and then he moves to Australia, and now all of a sudden he's a Jeep guy when Australia is like deep in Toyota country. So
many
that was
Toyotas
kind of
there.
a funny thing.
He said that's the first time that he hasn't wanted to buy another car. So he's obsessed with his Jeep.
Oh, cool.
It's a nice Jeep. I really like it a lot. Yeah.
Rad.
So he's a Jeep guy now.
Yeah. Well, Tony, nice to finally have you on here.
Yeah, sorry about the last two times.
No biggie, man. Things happen.
I'm old. I forget things
here. Me too. No biggie.
All right, so I'm Tony Phalen. I've been in the industry for probably about as long as Thad, about 30 years. Used to race closely with Thad back in the HPI days. Did a lot of racing. There was a track that was about 3 minutes from my house. Opened up there. Was down there 5 days a week, racing all the time. If I know Aaron's raced. I'm sure everybody here has raced before, but the first time you race and you it's that like that adrenaline, like that fix, and I caught that pretty hard. I was about in my mid-20s, caught that pretty hard, and I've been racing ever since. Got sponsored by Team Associated back in that day, raced for them for a while, kind of raced with HPI when they first were coming out with the touring car. Was it the Pro? I think the R4 Pro? Yep. Was the Pro 2. Yep. Raced that at a bunch of the bigger races, the Reedy race, that type of thing. Went on from there, went to a real job like Aaron. RC gets expensive. You need jobs to pay the bills. Yeah. But actually worked for Axial for a while. I've met Adam at the Axial Fest a couple times. And then moved on from Axial to Tamiya, where I've been for the last, 5 years. And one thing I kind of wanted to touch on, what you were talking about not building things like anybody else. And I was never really a Tamiya guy because I was a racer. So I was with the Team Associated, HPI, like Losi, like all the race brands. When I got to Tamiya, I noticed one thing is that they do not follow the status quo. They are just like, their cars are not really 10th scale. They're more like, 9th scale. Nothing is the same with Tamiya. And I've found that interesting because they're a huge company that sells a ton of product. Like, it blew me away how much they sell. But it's for people that aren't racers. It's for people that want to have a good time. I mean, Haley, you had the F1 car and made it look fantastic. And you don't race it, but it looks rad, right? So, sorry, that was a tangent, but I wanted to interject that.
I wanted to hear this actually. Like, wanted to elaborate on some of this that you're saying. So that's awesome.
Yeah. But the UF1, getting back to Formula One, I've been a Formula One fan forever as well. And getting back to the UF1, I actually got into the UF1 about 2011. It was run by another guy named Charles Lightfoot.
Yep.
Is it okay to get into that right now? Or you want to talk about that later?
Whatever
Do
you
it.
want to do. Yeah.
Okay. So Charles Lightfoot had this series. It was really cool. I decided I would get into it. Back in those days, the cars were kind of not great. They were kind of modified pan cars with these rubber tires that weren't great. Traction wasn't good. Handling wasn't great. You really had to be a driver to get these things to go around the track. And it didn't draw a lot of people to them other than this, at that time, kind of scale look. The 2012 series, Charles decided he was stepping down. I was racing that year. I told him, hey, I'll take it. I want it. I want to continue, because he was basically saying, I'm done. We're not doing this anymore. And I love the series. I love the way that they did the qualifying, that they did the races. Everything about it was very similar to real Formula One. We had pit stops. So I took the series over, and I immediately did an overhaul of the rules. Tried to really gear it toward Formula One, as close to Formula One, to even the point after the race, I do a write-up like they would do on Formula One. I did the graphics, like if you see the graphics first, second, third for that year, I copied those and made those exactly like that with the drivers, so that to get it as close to Formula One as real.
Right.
We had a DHL Fast Lap Award, and every year that Formula One changed something, I kind of changed something as far as the graphics. But overall, the racing stayed the same, and I did that for 11 years. But the one thing that kind of got me is I love to race. And in this series, I didn't race because I felt that I needed to be able to take the pictures, watch for, the rule sets, do tech, do scoring. Like, it was a lot. And right, Aaron?
It's so much work.
and so it was just so much work. And I'm like, and I kind of brought this on myself. I just wanted to be super cool for everybody racing. And so when I'm like, my wife's like, you really put a lot of work into this, and it just takes so much time. And I'm like, yeah, but it's so fun. I enjoy it, but I really want to race. So I tried racing. Another series I created was for the Euro trucks, and I tried racing in that and doing all the same thing. No, I couldn't. It just wouldn't happen. So how long have you had it now, Aaron? 2 years?
This will be the third season.
So
Wow,
2 years
2
ago, I
years.
decided I want to race. And Aaron had called me about something about one of the rules or something like that. And it was just like perfect timing. It was in my head that I was done, and I wasn't sure how I was going to get rid of it or who I was going to give it to. And Aaron just called me. And I'm like, hey,
Yeah, what sucker is going to take this?
hey, buddy, guess
Here
what?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. How would you like to? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, dude, it's a lot of work. Let me tell you. But if you don't go overboard like I was doing, it is work, but it's not so bad. And so I was able to pawn it off on Aaron or Aaron, and and then I got to start racing in it and have had such a good time doing it. It is so fun. We put a lot, like one of the things we did was to get people to really scale up the cars is we added a bonus points so that to get the cars as scale as possible. The bonus points, you had to have a number on a car. Every driver got assigned a number at the beginning of the series, and it was your number. Nobody else could run that number. Liveries, helmets, lighting if you had lighting. What else was there?
Diffuser was one. Wheel stickers.
Is as scale as possible. And if you hit those 5 points, you got extra points. Well, I figured it's a point series. People are going to want the points, so they're going to really livery up the cars. And we had a constructor series, and so it really helped. I think the series get people into it because of the scale side of it, and it worked out good.
That's
it was fun.
Awesome. I mean, that's the exact type of thing that I like really geek out on. It's especially like going as far as the constructors championship and stuff. I mean, that's really, really cool.
Team works.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
I used to be Team R1 Wurks. I was too slow.
And look what happened when you left.
I'm glad that we
I know.
can finally like have you guys on here and talk about this, because I mean, like, it really does fall right in line with like kind of the core thing that we all think is cool with the Scale RC stuff. You know, like Adam is maybe a little bit more specialized, I think, in what he's into. I mean, you're very much an off-road guy, and you're kind of into anything and everything off-road. Trav
More or
and I
less.
yeah, I mean, Trav and I are kind of anything automotive for the most part. I mean, like off-road is kind of probably our first love, with a really like close second with like, you know, like on-road racing and stuff like that. Not RC, but I mean, as far as being motorsports fans and stuff. So, you know, this is something that is like the drifting and everything else. It's like Scale RC seems to be kind of underneath this like very small umbrella in a lot of people's minds, that it's just crawler stuff. You know, it's like crawlers are kind of the very first thing that pops into somebody's mind when you're bringing up Scale RC. And now, you know, like with drifting and stuff, those guys have like an insane level of detail that's just right on par with all the guys that are doing the crawling stuff. And then you've got you guys kind of taking it a step further, where you've got the scale looks and everything else, and now you're having the scale events to go along with it. And it's all of that's like very much in the spirit of like the crawler stuff and everything. And so that's why, you know, it was kind of important to me that I wanted to try and get everybody in the same place at once and go over this, because it's rad, you know. And like, you guys tried to do the Australian V8 Supercars RC version of that, and that kind of is similar to what you've done with the F1 series, if I understand correctly. I don't know if
the supercars were so sick, by the way. They were so fun to watch.
It's rad. I mean, it's like really, really physical racing and stuff. It's really cool to see. And like, I was super excited when that car came out from Associated and everything. And then, you know, we saw this plan of like a series to go along with it and stuff. And like, I love the idea of the teams and the constructors championships and stuff like that, with trying to keep the spirit of scale that you guys are. Is how are you keeping this from taking off and turning into everything looking like spaceships, like what happens with every other discipline of RC racing? You know, like it all kind of starts out looking somewhat realistic, kind of like short course and stuff. And then by the end of it, it's like a short course truck with, you know, a rocket somehow worked into the design, you know, and big wings and fins. And
well, that's
you know,
really like the scale points incentive, though, isn't it?
That was what the initial thought
Yeah.
was to not have it morph into performance over looks. But I think F1's a little more difficult too, because touring cars, they just put a blob on top of a high performance chassis and there's no scale to that. But F1, you can provide scale. And so that was the initial thought, was I don't want guys with the blobby paint jobs and the stripes and the scallops. I want liveries. That's keep it scale. And that was, I think, one of the 5 things was it had to have a livery, not a blobby paint job.
Now the supercars, that was going to be spec racing originally. And did you guys have to like lighten up on the rules to get more people involved? Or
well, when I found out about the Australian V8 car from Associated, the ST550. And the first thing I thought of was that was always been one of the coolest racing series I've ever seen. Door to door, these guys banging on each other, the cars look rad. And so I worked with Brad over at Associated to get a car over, get a couple painted up in a kind of a livery, and then go out and run them. I think at the time there was some, and not by, I know Aaron actually worked on the car, but it wasn't, I don't think it was his fault. It was kind of decisions made above him. The car had some flaws in it.
It had quirks. quirks.
It did. And so to get the car to drive around the track with a normal person was difficult. You had to be a really good driver and really be on your toes to get the car to handle. And so I worked with Brad, and I think I worked with Aaron a little bit to get the car kind of in a better position. But at that time, there was some issues with
Things were changing.
Things were changing. Trying to be politically correct. Things were changing. And so getting cars out to the public and everything, just the series is still online. The rule sets and everything are still online. It mimics, just like Formula One, it mimics everything of the touring cars, the super touring cars. It's just getting to the next point of, like, I almost thought, we'll just use the bodies, use whatever chassis you want, use those bodies. So that way it's kind of keeps the flavor of it. But
yeah,
it's kind of stalled because I don't have the time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Basically.
No, that's understandable. No, that's why I was curious, just because, like, with keeping that as like a spec class, let's say, or whatever, like, you are keeping it from just getting out of control, you know? And so, like, the Euro trucks and stuff like that, for example, like, I really like the idea of, like, spec racing and scale mated together. Otherwise, like, it's kind of like stock class with racing off-road, you know. At some point it's like just modified light, you know, because everybody's pushing the rules and, like, really, you know. But with F1, with what you guys are doing, is there really, what limitations do you guys have on, like, chassis design and stuff like that? Because, like, F1 in the real world obviously is, like, trying to push the envelope of technology and, you know, create the most sophisticated and highest performing race car that you can. So that spirit kind of translates over to the RC F1 side, but how do you kind of keep it from getting, you know, ridiculous to the point of where it's like what we saw happen with drag racing, where it's, you know, went from everybody with slashes that are kind of scale to, you know, carbon chassis with, you know, spaceship bodies and stuff. So, I mean, how are you guys finding that balance with the chassis portion of the series?
I think a lot of that is, one, the cars are fairly slow for a racing class. They're 25.5 brushless motors with 2-cell lipos, so they're not missiles down the back straight by any stretch. But for UF1, I think traditionally we've always really supported building custom stuff. Like, that is encouraged.
So you actually like want there to be constructors, like that's the whole point of that framework.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've got a guy, Philip, that has literally hand routed an entire carbon car that uses, you know, X-ray diff components, and it's got, you know, pull rod suspension and
4-wheel independent suspension.
Yeah,
it's sick.
Yeah, and it's belt drive, and he rips around the track with it. And Ferrari is his team, and he comes decked out in Ferrari, and, like, that's what we want. We want guys who are, you know, that just love F1 and that want to be there, and they, you know, they just want to be involved with the series. And we're not super strict on, you know, it's got to have this type of suspension. A lot of that equalizes out in the fact that we go to different tracks. So a low grip track, that independent suspension car might really shine, but when we go to the VHT sticky tacky track that's Velcro, that same car might not be that great. And that's really, I think, you know, a big key factor of it is just there's so much variety. You know, just the cars themselves will have 6 or 7 different manufacturers in the A main sometimes, and we'll even have, you know, Phillips custom car, or, you know, like 3D printed cars, or it's really, that's the coolest part about the series for me, is that it's, you know, you're encouraged to be creative and come up with stuff, and it's supported. And the cars being slow still allows everybody to stay pretty close.
Don't let him fool you. 25.5 in a 2-wheel, and then the other thing that kind of limits the car too is it's rear-wheel drive only.
Sure.
Don't let him fool you. 25.5 with a 2S in a properly set up Formula One car is just tenths slower than a compatible or comparable touring car.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
they're fast. They're fast, and we were running 21.5. We were running 17.5. There's a limit to the power you can put in these cars. 25.5 though seems to be like it's plenty fast on the straightaway. It's rips in the infield. And like you said, when you're on a high grip track, they're so fun to drive. They're so glued.
Is it a cool enough group of people to where you don't have the like, oh, his ride height isn't, what the rule book says it needs to be, or he's underweight or overweight, or like, do you guys have like the like one
Police?
or two guys? Yeah, I mean, like, is it pretty relaxed, or is there guys that really get like that serious and it kind of takes a little bit of the fun out of it? Or
I think most of the group is fairly relaxed. There are there's subgroups and cliques just like every other group. So yeah, there are, subgroups that are very technical and they want, the motors to be 100% torn down and teched. Other guys just want to run and have fun. We try and do a healthy balance of the two. So, we check widths. We don't really check ride heights. Things like, running plastic wings instead of a sheet of carbon fiber, or that you're running 25.5. So we try and do a balance. Usually after every round, I get several emails of, you guys didn't do this, or, so it's never perfect, but yeah, there's everybody's slightly different.
Sure.
We try to have a healthy balance of both.
I was just curious because, especially with like you guys having kind of like this like maker culture, with everybody that's, it sounds like it's way more involved with just racing. It's guys that are like passionate to the point of like they're making their own stuff, and that's not really something you see with like 8th scale off-road or anything like that. So I'm just picturing like this way different environment at the races than anything that I've ever at least been exposed to, because it's not usually people involved on such a technical level with developing the cars that everybody's there racing.
The rules are pretty well set up that it gives, they're pretty specific, but the specifics are within a range. So wheelbase has to be 190. I mean, width has to be 190. Like there are hard rules, but some of them are 2-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive chassis. That's it. You have to have a wheelbase, you have to have a width, and then you can make it work with anything in there. We've seen guys come out with a solid axle rear suspension, but with a like a CVD drive to add rear toe to the car.
Sorry.
And game changer when you have rear toe in a solid axle car. I mean, it's huge.
Bet.
That was pretty nice. Yeah.
But
wow.
The thing that I've always thought of was Formula One is the upper echelon of racing. It's kind of anything goes within the rules, and that's the way I always thought it should be. Open it up to any kind of driveline you want. Belt, chain, like I don't care, because that's only going to make the next car or the future cars that much better. Thad has come up with a bunch of cool designs for the Exotech car, like kind of add-on parts that we've been using, and they're phenomenal. Like the dude's, he's like, oh, check this out. I'm like, okay, I don't even care what it does. I just want to run it because it looks rad, right? And his car is always like on point. So, yeah, it's always just cool to add the new gimmicky stuff to it.
What do you guys do about? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Right. I would say one cool aspect of the series that I think has been pretty constant is the photo gallery. So for every round, we do a photo gallery of drivers and cars, starting grids, people just standing around, whatever, just to try and kind of communicate the group and ideas that people are having. If someone has a cool car, parts that they bring, if they're willing to let us take photos, we take photos and add it to the gallery, and people will look forward to seeing those. I don't know if Tony ever had this experience, but if you took like Sunday off, because you typically race on Saturday, you take Sunday off, and it's like Monday at 9 or 10 a.m., people are like, where's the gallery? Like, where's the write up?
Every
are the
time,
points
dude.
up? So it's
Yeah.
that's a bit of a different feature of the series, in that you go to a normal off-road race or an on-road race, there's some photos here and there that get blasted up on Facebook, but there's never typically a chronological gallery of however many years it's been of racing. The website is massive just
That's
because of the space needed for all the photos.
That's so cool. Do you guys, what do you do? There's a lot of different eras of bodies available. What do you guys do? Like, I mean, or do you have like vintage looking cars on the track with, like 2022 cars? I mean, like how, okay.
There's performance advantages to bodies. So most of the guys will
Right.
run, most of the top 10, I guess, in the series, and that are top 10 in the points, will run the performance body. Those down below may run, an older body, put the wing mirrors on it, add the little like over the tires, and kind of make it a little bit more scale, which is cool to see. But I mean, you could tell those guys are out there just because they want to drive F1. It's fun and show off a cool car.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah, so ETS, they regulate that you have to run a specific body and a specific wing. We don't really constrain guys into that. We want whatever livery they have in mind. That goes along with the body style or with the era. We want to support them and let them do that. That's part of the fun.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, that way, if a guy wants to race Senna's car, one weekend, he can. So, no, that's rad.
Yep, sure.
Oh, that is awesome. Haley, I want to get back to your trip over there to Australia, the most recent one here, since that's all kind of like fresh in your mind. You know what it's like to be an F1 fan in the US, and I'm assuming do you watch most of the rounds, like the televised ones and stuff? I mean, do you follow it to that point, or you just try
Pretty
and catch
much
as many as you can?
Yeah, I try to. Last year I watched pretty much all the races because I was going to the Spanish Grand Prix, and then I didn't watch the one, what is it? Was it China? Yeah, I have like my 3D printed
That's
F1,
so cool.
All the different tracks for the season. But I didn't watch the China one because I was in Australia still. But watched Japan and then Bahrain coming up. So I guess I'm a fan. Yeah.
How much bigger is it in other countries than it is here? Because that's like, America is such a weird thing for motorsports, and I don't know.
Weird, yeah.
Like I was talking to Brad at AE about this not too long ago, and what we were talking about at the time was like how short course can't survive in the US, and like how rallycross can't, and like on the moto side of things, like how supermoto couldn't. And Brad had said that it's the drama, like those lack the big personalities and the drama that goes with it that like NASCAR and stuff has. And you definitely get that with F1. And I think that, like Drive to Survive probably helped boost that with the American audience and stuff. Definitely. But it's still just not, things just aren't cool here that are cool everywhere else, So like how much bigger was it when you were in Australia and in Spain?
Yeah, I mean, you go at a time where it's like there's a big inundation of like, I don't know, I think they almost had 500,000 people going over like the 4 days of the track being open, which it's weird because it's not as big in the US, but we're the only country to have 3 races here. Every other country gets 1 race. And so we do have I think Drive to Survive did get a lot of US fans into it. I would say there's probably, it started in Great Britain, and Silverstone, I think, was the first F1 race. So it started in Europe, but it's growing here. enough so that they are now hosting 3 races. One thing that's better overseas is that the tickets are cheaper. For some reason here, they're
Really?
like extravagantly expensive.
So expensive.
I think that's a big deterrent for sure for a lot of people here.
Is it one of those things where it's like the entire town is just decked out because, you know, the shows come to town and, you know, you
Pretty
see
much
signage everywhere? I mean, is it crazy
when you
like
arrive at the
that? Or
airport. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, when you arrive at the airport, they have F1 signs everywhere.
really? Oh, wow.
In Australia, the circuit was like pretty much in the city, like maybe 10 minutes out of town. In Barcelona, we had to go like 45 minutes or an hour out of the city. So
Oh,
it
wow.
felt a lot more present, like everyone wearing like F1ers walking around Melbourne everywhere. Less so in Barcelona. You didn't see, like, you saw it a little bit, but it wasn't as present because the track's further out. So yeah, I think it depends.
How accessible was, like, I don't know, like I don't really have anything to compare it to even like ask you the right questions, but like with Supercross, you've got, like, they call it the pit party now, but like, you know, you can like get a pit pass to go out and, you know, like, is there like a paddock pass that people can get?
For
Or like,
sure. Yeah.
so
If you want to
so
spend
it
like
is
$4
accessible?
grand.
Oh,
Easy.
Jesus. Wow.
Yeah, they have a lot of tiers. There's a lot of different grandstands. So you got to do pretty much when tickets go on sale, you got to be ready to buy them the day they go on sale if you want the right grandstand and you want race day or multiple days of passes. And so they have a lot of different. I was on turn 1, which all the chaos. So there were 6 DNFs in the Australian Grand Prix. 2 of the cars were like right in front of where I was, which was pretty cool. So it's like the first straightaway, turn 1, there's like a chicane and chaos. Plus the rain made it insane.
Oh God, yeah, the rain's crazy.
Yeah, I forgot your question. What was your I just got excited about F1 stuff.
No, that's fine. No, we were talking about like accessibility and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the different ticket packages and stuff.
Yeah, because
it does
like,
feel very elitist, I think.
Really?
As far as attending, a lot of different VIP areas. You're never gonna meet the drivers. Actually, the Mercedes drivers, Russell and Antonelli stayed. I was at an Airbnb and they stayed at the Ritz-Carlton right across the way. So every day I went, there's just fans lined up trying to get a view
really
of the Mercedes drivers. And I guess, yeah, I saw on TikTok that they were there, like right outside where I was, you know, but then you have
so
to
that's
wait,
like movie
hours.
star level fame, like people camping out trying
Pretty
to like
much.
get a glimpse.
Yeah.
Wow.
The F1 drivers.
I just you don't quite see that level of enthusiasm for racing in the United States like that. You know, I mean, it's like NASCAR fans are, you know, kind of their own thing and stuff, but like I don't know. I don't think it's quite on the level of like what you're describing though, you know?
Yeah, they're kind of treated like movie stars. I think they're like some of the highest paid athletes ever in any sport. So I think the echelon and the pressure and that people have to be trained pretty much from birth to be an F1 driver, like 18, 19-year-olds driving like multi-million-dollar cars. Yeah.
I mean, so much of the field, there's like kids, you know? I mean, it's
Yeah,
like,
they're all kids.
yeah, I mean, like George Russell and like Charles Leclerc look like children, you know what I mean? It's just, it's crazy. So did I hear you correctly when did you say 500,000 people?
I think it was like 400 and something thousand over the 4 days that the track was open. So they had like F1, F2, I think they had F3, and then they had the supercars. And then they have bands playing the whole time too, and just lots of events around the circuit the whole day. They basically want people going all 4 days if you can.
They ran the supercars on the same track?
Yeah, they did.
Really?
Crazy. Same
All
track.
the stuff we don't get to see.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah. It was fun. It was fun to watch this. I was unfamiliar with that. I guess it only takes place in Australia.
Yeah.
So a little research on it, but yeah, pretty fun.
Wow, that is wild. I'm trying to grasp the scale, because it's like you go to like a round of like Supercross or something here, and like a packed stadium is what, 40-50,000 people, I guess, depending on the size of the stadium. So I mean, and like that's a lot, and that's like a lot of people like waiting in line and like trying to exit and leave at the end of it. And I'm trying to imagine the scale of like what you're talking about with that many people, and I'm just, it's like, how is it not just like gridlock the entire?
It's probably a lot more
Infrastructure.
transient, right? Because like there's different things people are interested in, and like there's always like this like different supporting race packages for each round, right? Like I think like Monza will get like a 911 Cup or something, and then like F2, right?
Mhm.
But so I think that definitely helps, for like gives people kind of an opportunity to like actually leave and go do something.
That's wild. With
Yeah,
like
there's a lot of
entertainment and stuff going on too at the rounds, that's just nuts. Just very, very different culture than what I'm familiar with. That's wild. So one sec here. With F1 being so popular in Europe and it's gaining traction here in the US, with your guys' F1, the UF1 series, is there a European version or like Asian version of what you guys are doing? Is there like a IFMAR of F1 type? How big globally, I guess, is kind of what I'm like asking, like, is this?
I think UF1 is pretty specific to Southern California. Tony, I think at one point we had tried an East Coast series.
Yeah, we had one got a couple guys contacting me about doing like F1 affiliate sites. We had one, I think, in maybe Nebraska, one in New York. The only So the UF1 rules were initially used by IFMAR. If you went to the IFMAR site, it said UF1 rules. I mean, that was their official statement, and then the list of the rules. And then when we changed our rules, they changed their rules. I think it's different now. But the other sites, the only thing I said is you have to use the UF1 rules. You can't deviate from them because they're no longer than UF1 rules. If you want to be UF1 Ohio, I'll help you set up a site. I'll do everything you need to do, and then you have to just use the rules the way they're set. And I think it lasted. They don't get near as many people as we do racing, so I think those little satellite places lasted maybe one season, maybe 2 seasons, and then they just didn't have that same kind of feel like we have here. People are excited about the UF1 here. It wasn't quite. I think there was too many rules. Maybe they didn't want to have to do the liveries, and they didn't want to have to do this and do that and the other thing, and so they just disbanded within 1 or 2 seasons. And yeah.
Internationally, there's a series in Italy. I think they run way more specific rules than we do. They like the liveries have to be like the current cars, spec body, spec wheels, spec electronics. They fill out a whole grid with current liveries and teams. That's a fairly successful series. And then ETS has Formula One. That's more just kind of traditional RC racing though. It's similar motors and speed, but 5-minute mains type thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was curious
it's not a
about
point
that.
series.
If it's like, more just a car class at most places,
Yeah,
local tracks and stuff like that, or maybe certain countries' national championships or something. Maybe they have like whatever their version is. They have a F1 class along with like whatever else touring car classes they have.
Yeah, domestically, United States, Roar has a set of rules. We're basically right alongside Roar with most of the rules. So if you go to a nationals, your UF1 chassis is going to be fairly well kitted out for a Roar event. As far as that box that you have to live in, it's by and large the same. They're a little bit more specific on some chassis details, but for the spirit of our series and wanting guys to be creative, we're a bit more relaxed.
Right on. With having like the constructors championships and stuff like that, when you guys have teams, how identically prepared do the cars have to be? Is that something you guys like pay attention to or try to loosely follow, or is it just for the most part just like the livery and the body that matches?
Yeah, typically it's just the delivery, the wing package. We're not teching like their chassis have to be the same manufacturer or they're on the same tire compounds. Like we just want them to look like their teams, on the grid. We can subtly vary delivery, between drivers. Like Thad and Tony, I believe your guys' wheel decals and are the numbers different colors?
Yeah,
or
numbers are the same, just different wheel discs, colors.
So yeah, there's some changes allowed so you can tell who's who, mainly for the race announcer.
Right.
We don't get the luxury of the little top hat because that would fly off the car the first rollover. So we got to do something a little different.
Yeah.
But the teams are really cool. And the way we run teams, it doesn't have to be a current manufacturer or even any current like F1 sponsors. Last year we had a team Shake and Bake, and like it was Wonder Bread, and and that's totally fair game. So it's more just in the spirit of getting together, and you got a buddy and you want to come race and you want to be team Shake and Bake, then we're happy to have you.
No, that's cool, because I mean it's like with what I do with work and stuff. I mean I like doing replica liveries and stuff like that too, but like it's also like really fun to just have that what if, let's pretend component of RC where it's like, if I had a real race team, what would it look like? And how. So I mean, it's cool that you guys are encouraging that type of stuff, and it's not like the fun police and it's got to be a replica of what's currently racing this year and stuff. I mean, because it's really easy to go overboard with that stuff, and like you were saying, like too many rules to where it kind of chases people off. But it's like, it's so hard because you've also got to have like just the right amount of rules so that it's not chaos and hurt feelings and people being upset with each other and stuff like that. And it's so tough. I mean, I personally, like, Travis and I have both had like stints doing race director duties at local tracks and series and stuff like that, and it's like it's tough and it's really thankless work. And like when you guys are talking about Aaron and Tony about like what you kind of just go through and the amount of work, and like how you have to be a race director and you've got to be a PR guy and a marketing guy and you're the social media guy too, like you've got to kind of be everything. It's so much work and stuff, and like trying to just find that balance is so difficult. And that's one of the things that I think you guys have done such a good job, because like I just geek out on what you've done with it. And one of your other friends, and I don't know if I'm even saying his name right, Jeremy. I thought it said just Jeremy at first, but he's got like an extra R in there.
So just so you know, I asked him, is it really Jeremy? And he's like, no, it's Jeremy. But when he signed up, he accidentally added the extra R and just said, screw it, I'm going to keep the extra R in there. His name is Jeremy, but it's Jeremy or whatever it is. Okay. And I've been calling him that every single day. Hey, Jeremy, what's up? And he's just like, oh, hi. Never corrected me. And then one day
he
I'm
just thought you had a stutter all this time.
Yeah, or something. Yeah.
Oh, funny. So like he participates in some of your guys' race series and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
one of the things that he does, which I thought, and it's super nerdy, but it's so rad at the same time, is his rally series, where he has gone so far as to have each round that year, he'll have like a Monte Carlo round, and he'll have, a Safari Rally round, and like it's super cool, and it's like very much kind of in line with the spirit of what you guys are doing. And so like I'm starting to see like how it kind of makes sense that he's involved in both now, because it has that same appeal with both of it, that kind of like scale racing, it's you guys are taking it a step further than typical RC racing. Like it's like, especially with like the qualifying that you were talking about and stuff, and the manufacturers series and everything. Like I'm not saying this in a derogatory way, but like you guys are like nerding out with it, and it's awesome. And I hope that it continues to just appeal to more people because of that, because RC racing just seems like such a stale, kind of stagnant thing right now. Like it's been the same for such a long time, and the same people for such a long time, and kind of the same manufacturers and the same formats and stuff. And like, it just, for me at least, it kind of felt like a grind for a while. Like there's times where it's like, looking back, it's like, it'd be fun to kind of maybe go and race Nitro again. And then I'm like, no, it wouldn't, and Travis and I were talking about this not too long ago, where he was thinking about wanting to race off-road again and do Nitro and stuff. And it's just, it seems like RC kind of just plugs along and stuff, and you've got the people that drop away, and then the new people that kind of show up and take their place and stuff in the local scenes and everything. And it just, the racing itself and the formats and stuff hasn't really, seems like it hasn't changed or evolved that much over time. And with what you guys are doing, keeping it scale and everything, I really hope that has a way of like broadening the appeal to people, because I mean, I feel like that's kind of what drew all of us to RC at some point to begin with, was the scale realism of it, like even like back in the day when like the RC10 looked like an actual buggy, like a real Doom buggy, somewhere between that and now they started to look like spaceships. And
it's performance over looks.
Yeah, and the same thing happened with like rock crawling and stuff. I mean, it you've got like the Sorka trucks, which were kind of borderline scale, not really, after a few years. And then now everything's like the crazy carbon chassis, comp builds and stuff. And it's like RC guys can't stop pushing the envelope with performance. And especially in the case of drag racing, it ends up being kind of like, well, how much money are you willing to spend on it to go fast? And I really hope that people see what you guys are doing and develop an appreciation for that, because that's what keeps it fun, and hopefully will not be, burning people out and seeing people, drop away and then come back and stuff. And it's I feel like what you're doing is something that's very much needed in the hobby right now. And that's not just me being like selfish because of my own interests, but I mean, it's just people watch F1 because of it is F1 and the liveries and the personalities and the colors and stuff like that. And it's like, all of us want to be behind the wheel or doing that. And that's like the reason you get into RC, is because you're stoked on the real version of that, And so hopefully this will keep it from turning into the rest of RC, that's just kind of like my big fear, is that you guys have done something really awesome and cool and unique, and it ends up getting diluted like everything else and just, performance oriented. So I appreciate the fact that you guys are really like sticking to your guns, but also finding that balance of keeping it super fun and accessible for people too, you know, because there's not a lot of RC racing, especially that's like super accessible to people, you know. It's like novice classes are pretty small. You don't see a lot of like, you don't see kids necessarily that often getting into RC racing or anything like that, you know, and it's just, you know, the rules can push people away and stuff. So I really, for not that my opinion's worth much or anything, but I really appreciate what you guys have done with this and how you've grown it and how you've presented it to the rest of the world. You know, it's really cool and unique. And I hope that continues to inspire more people not to just get involved, but also, you know, like, I really hope that somebody in, you know, like Great Britain wants to do what you guys are doing, you know, with an F1 series and stuff. And eventually it'll get to the point where, you know, you've got more than just a handful of manufacturers that are making cars, you know, because it would be cool to have options and option parts. And I mean, it's like, who doesn't want to see something like this grow, because it's just going to feed that passion that everybody already has for it, you know. And especially with the real thing gaining so much traction in the world right now, and especially like in the United States, it's finally, you know, kind of building an audience. This is just like the perfect time for you guys to be doing what you're doing, you know, as the two hopefully will kind of grow together, you know. I guess is like a really long-winded way of me trying to say that. Sorry.
Just to touch on that, one of the things that I think that for those that are listening that don't know, one of the ways that we've done it, we've made qualifying is you get 3 minutes on the track, and you got I think it's a little bit more now. What is it? It's a 10-minute session now, right?
Yeah, so we lengthened qualifying to a 10-minute session where you can pull off the track and change your spring or change your tire compounds. You just have to run the same chassis, but it allows you to, you know, run off the driver's stand and change something and come back.
That's rad.
I love that.
Get your 3 laps in.
But the cool thing about it is that the way that we score it is we score it 3 consecutive laps. So you have to put in 3 consecutive and average it. So what we found was that when you do your typical single fast lap, 1st through 10th place in qualifying could be 4 or 5 seconds apart. When you do 3 consecutive averaged, 1st through 10th place is less than a second apart. Like real Formula One, it's tenths and thousandths of a second.
That is cool.
Can put you 1st through 10th. And I mean, you heard in the beginning, I really don't race that much anymore. Thad doesn't really race that much anymore, but we're racing Formula One. The format, and once people see it and do it, they're like, this format is the way all racing should be. It's so much more fun. You get, what are our races? Our races are 12 minutes?
12 minutes, yeah.
You get, what's 3 times 12? 36 minutes of racing instead of 5. Or, you know, if you're racing the Nitro, you're racing an hour. But most races are 6 to 7 minutes. You're getting 36 minutes of racing.
But you're not spending more time qualifying than racing, which is like, that's
correct.
A huge issue that we've had, right?
And like we said, there's pit stops where you have to come in and pull into the pits. You can use it strategically. If you're caught behind some slower cars and you can't get around them, you come into the pits, you get your sticker on your car, you come back out. I mean,
got to have a race strategy.
Yeah, exactly it. And
that's so cool.
I mean, Thad, how many times have we been racing together or we're behind somebody like Ridwell or something like that, and you know that and before there was a timer, you'd come in, you'd wait a specific amount of time, 8 seconds or something like that, and then to shoot you back out, which was cool because you could come into the pit and you'd be basically, if it was a 16-second lap, we would be cutting down to 8 seconds. So you'd be coming out basically half a lap behind the person, so you wouldn't come in traffic. However, what Aaron did, and I didn't agree with that. I'm like, this is not going to work.
I know.
But listen, hold on. I got a point here. That you come into the pit, you get your sticker, and you go right back out. And I thought, well, this is going to suck because you don't really. But the thing that you can do now, like Haley said, is you could run around the track, and if you've got good peripheral vision, you can get on the straightaway, look to see how far the car is behind you, know you're within distance for the car, come into the pit and get right back out, still in front of the car that was behind you, if you can use your peripheral and time
so
it.
You're just being your own spotter.
Right. So
you are.
And it actually has worked out really good in a couple races where you can really spot and use the pit and don't lose any positions.
Because the one thing is, when you're racing RC cars, the announcer is calling traffic for the leader, right? So if you can, get a huge lead and still come out the leader, he's still calling you. So, back markers are gonna get out of your way. But, if you pit at the wrong time and come out in second or third, you're kind of rolling the dice. Like maybe you get hit by a back marker, maybe you don't. Like even a strategy I used for a long, long time was some tracks you would pull into the pit and that line's not as clean as the racing surface. So your car would slow down 0.2 when you came into the pit and came out. So I would basically wait until the very, very bitter end to do all my pit stops, because why would I give up the 0.2?
Well,
So
yeah,
that
because you're
was-
going to have dirty tires, and they're going to be cooled
For
off
at least
a
2
little bit
laps
too,
or 3
right?
laps, yeah.
Well, in some tracks it was just a permanent deficit. So, you're
Wow.
losing time, repetitively when you're doing 70, 80 laps in a race. So there's a lot of layers to adding the pit stops than more than just, a stop and go penalty. If you look at it enough, there's gray areas where you can either take advantage or suffer.
That is so cool. I mean, that was one of the things that we always really liked about like 8 Scale Nitro was pit strategy and stuff. Like it's just something different and kind of just mixes things up a little bit, and like that is, when you guys are doing pit stops, you said put a sticker on it, so you've got like somebody who tries to like do it as quickly as they can consistently across the board for everybody that comes in. Or
so the same person, typically it's like a turn marshal. So instead of turn marshaling, you'll be the pit guy. So that same person will do everybody's car. So yeah, it's just as long as they're consistent in their motions. If somebody comes in and hits the wall and they're holding the gas and, they take longer, then, that's on them. But typically, yeah, if someone comes in a controlled fashion, they kind of do the same repetitive motion, put the sticker anywhere on the car, and, off they go. We used to have a timer. Some people, like, the guy would bend over, he'd miss the button and the timer wouldn't go off, and he's sitting there picking up your car, and it's this whole monkey motion thing. And,
right.
It's like, well, let's just try nothing. And, it seems to be okay. There's pluses and minuses to doing both. Makes my life a little easier not having to carry the timer around, but
Have a charged battery.
Yeah. The first race when I got UF1 and Tony brought me the box of stuff and the timer's in there, and this timer is the original timer since 2009. So it is
wow.
like before Arduino was even like super popular. It's this hand soldered PCB breadboard thing, and it's got I don't think it's Bluetooth. I don't know what kind of module, and there's a separate speaker. So a buzzer.
No, dude, it uses like a receiver. Like it's got a receiver with a little antenna.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
wacky.
Yeah, it works though every time, which is the crazy part. So it brings this big tote and like puts it down on the ground. Where's the batteries? And it was like the morning of the race, so I had to call my wife like to bring me a couple of crawler packs.
Had to start you off right.
Yeah, just full panic. Awesome.
Of course, that's always how something like that works. What do you guys do for tires? Do you try and follow kind of the same model that Real F1 does with tire compounds and stuff?
Not as much. We run a spec tire brand, so we run the Exotech F1 rubber tires. The thing about the 10 scale F1 cars being mostly solid axle, and like you'll hear real F1 drivers complain about balance, and that is super critical with even these F1 cars. You could be running the wrong front tire, whether it's too soft or too hard, and your balance is just wrecked. And you're for sure a half second a lap off the pace, or even not even really getting around the track. And different brands like softer tires, they like harder tires. So don't really specify like, okay, everybody's got to be on yellows today.
Gotcha.
Just because if that was the case, then everybody's design would start to merge, right? And so some guys, like, they run super soft fronts. Some guys run hockey pucks for fronts. And as long as they're running that brand rubber tire, that's really all we're after.
That's cool. I mean, then it's like consistent with like, you know, obviously like Pirelli with F1. So you got Exotech with UF1. So
Yeah.
Speaking of Exotech, like you guys, I don't know how, I have no idea who the owner is of Exotech or, you know, even who works there or anything like that. But I'm assuming somebody, one of the higher ups there has got to be an F1 fan to have taken on the endeavor of doing an actual chassis. Are they, is that the case? I mean, it like,
Yeah.
because that would be a hard sell.
He's a geek like us.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm calling it now. He wins this year.
Yeah.
Dude, his car's so fast right now.
I was curious because I know honestly just nothing about the company at all, you know, and all of a sudden it's like, you know, I've seen their parts over the years and stuff, and then just out of left field it's like F1 car kit. It's like, whoa, okay, you know, how did this come about?
Yeah, I mean, Exotech, as far as the F1 history goes, started with Tamiya conversions. So you'd have a 104 and there's like an F1R, you know, chassis kit. At least that's how I got started with Exotech, running, you know, their products. And then yeah, eventually they did build up and come out with an F1 full F1 kit. What do you know about that kit, Thad?
It works well.
Yeah, it does.
It
Trade
does
secrets,
work well.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, Exotech and everybody involved, they do put a lot of freaking work in to their cars and their products. Yeah, and he's a fan and a geek just like us. There's a group chat, you know, all of us are in there and talk F1, and yeah, it's a good group.
That's awesome. Right on.
And the car is really good, but the tires are phenomenal. They basically revived RC Formula One by far.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
crazy.
awesome.
I mean, I think he's using actual touring car compounds. So from what I understand, the touring car compounds, and they go from like Aaron said, a hockey puck to a super duper super soft.
Yeah.
And depending on the track conditions, the temperature, they're temperature sensitive, so you can move up and down the range. And
tire warmers or not.
Yeah, tire warmers or not. And it's really hard to not. You can be off, but most people that kind of hit the right combination are going to be good on any given day on any condition.
Wow.
You know, for the most part. But they have definitely changed the world of RC Formula One for sure.
It's one of the most important parts of the car is just the tires and the range, the compound range that exists for the Exotech tire. It just makes it super easy for anyone. I mean, it's, you know, if you need less steering, you just go to a harder front, and it's not like your car's just going to push off the track. It'll still steer, but it just numbs it out enough to where, you know, it's manageable. But yeah, for sure, the Exotech tires changed F1. When I started F1, it was the Pitts Sumishu tire. I was running carpet and actually got out of F1 just because I was just tired of having to find the tires, or someone was running something that you can no longer get, or it's just, you know, it's just not, it's not fun. And then coming back into F1, I want to say it was 2022, maybe is when those came out.
Yeah.
Maybe the year before. put the car down and was just in shock at how well the car worked. It was like driving a 4-wheel drive touring car.
Yeah.
Where
No
of how aggressive you could actually drive the car. It was just amazing.
Wow. Now, do most of you guys run warmers or no?
I typically do.
Yeah.
Every day.
Depends on the track for me, but
Yeah, I was going to ask if you guys actually do use scaled tire warmers, but I guess that's a yes.
It really, because the tires do have a working temperature range. And if you want a little bit softer tire, it needs to be at that range to get on the track. So you can heat them up. I mean, I think the typical thing is to heat them up a little bit hotter than normal, because when you're walking from the track or from your pit to the track, there's a little bit of cool down period. You got to warm them up a little bit when you're just kind of tootling around the track. So it's like real F1. They put them on the warmers. They take the warmers off. You get online, you're weaving to get the tires up to temperature, and then boom, you're going.
Wow.
What might be kind of a difficult question to answer, but like, what's the like ideal, like the compound window, right, for like making like the right tire choice? Because like we have like this range. Does it get as specific, or is like track specific? It's like if you did make the wrong choice, where it's like you should have gone a step softer or a step harder, right? Then like how much is that penalizing you versus like if it were just
it can be huge. It can be huge. Aaron can say we've it's kind of rolling the dice. So you can qualify. Let's say there's sun on the track, and then all of a sudden the track's in cloud cover and it drops 10 degrees, and everyone's kind of looking at each other like, are we going to change tires? Are we going to?
I mean, we've literally sat there and had conversations like what we were going to do. You know,
there was also like corresponding color wheel decals or tire decals for the different compounds, and I myself, I'm sure other people, it's kind of like head games. So you would switch the colors, so you make people think you're running a harder tire or a softer tire. So, but now I think it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
One of the things that Thad and I do, we're teammates. One of the things we do is we're at a track and we're not quite sure, like the cloud cover's coming up. He'll throw on a set of tires. Our cars are pretty close to the same setup. He'll throw on a set of tires. I'll throw on a set of tires. We'll both go out there and then we'll come back and say, hey, this is what worked for me. This is what worked for you. And that's helpful, because when you've got 15 minutes between qualifying and the first round of main events, you don't have much time, and you got to make a decision, because you got to warm them. You got to mount them. You got to sauce them. You got to warm them. It takes time. So having a teammate does definitely help with that procedure for sure.
I typically have a logbook. So, I have a track and I have a few pages. So it'll be, track temp, ambient temp, and what compounds I was on.
I don't think Trav and I have raced since 2018, 2019.
And
something
what?
like that. Raced any kind of RC racing. Wasn't that kind of when we stopped with carpet and stuff? Was like 2019 maybe?
Yeah, it was probably a little bit after COVID started, maybe.
I completely forgot about the whole emotional roller coaster of tire choices until we started having this conversation. Like just the amount of stress that we would have, being at a track, like, oh God, we gonna run grids? What compound are we gonna run? It's just, man, those.
And the worst part is putting your car down for the first main event, knowing it's a 12-minute race and your car is awful. You go half a lap and you're doing donuts. You're like, how am I going to hold on to this car?
Williams.
How
what am I supposed to do?
How am I going to hold on to this car for 12 minutes? And I have to go through the dusty pit. Like, it's
and keep your cool and not take it out on everybody else or the car.
Yeah, right.
That happens. Yeah.
And the three of us can already say we've had that happen at tracks where we're like pumped up in practice. We're like, and then the cloud cover, put your car down first main event. And you're just like, agony. Like, and you're in the top 10. So you're with the fastest guys out there, and you know that you're going to be getting out of the way every third lap, every second lap, because you just can't get around the track.
Wow.
It's always best to err on the safe side. I found out.
See, what's funny is like, even like, let's say I wanted to get into, like, I want to build a car, right? Like, which I genuinely do want to build a car, but I want to build it more for just like a scale garage piece, because I mean, we have a track here locally that's actually really, really nice. But the problem that you run into here is like, you guys are Southern California, hotter than hell there. You know what tire compounds and stuff work. Up here, it's completely different. Our asphalt's different. It doesn't necessarily get like greasy or anything when it gets hot up here. And, you know, like our temperatures, like, you know, maybe 80, 85 if I go to the track one day. So it's like, I wouldn't even know where to start with tire compound or anything. So, I mean, it's like, it's really hard to get into this type of like racing or even get other people into it when it's like, it would be such a experience where you're just totally green to it. You know what I mean? Like, even if you're not like green to RC, like, it's still going to be like, man, we're going to have to spend a lot of time figuring out how to make these cars work, what tire compounds are going to work on this track. And it's so involved. And this is kind of bringing all these like memories of our days racing back to the surface of like all the little things that you like stress about and everything. So no,
Yeah,
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
This year we're gonna try and run an open F1 class, and just to try and see, you know, for like the average guy, you know, is there a combination that is, you know, easier to get up and running? Is there, you know, maybe an electronics package that's, you know, different than what we've run that is maybe faster but easier to drive? You know, there's some changes coming to like electronics and motors, you know, in August with Roar. So how does that impact, you know, the Formula One class? And having that open class is sort of a test bed for some of us this year to, you know, see, you know, maybe there's an offshoot class, or, you know, maybe we can find a combination that works better in different temperatures. Or, you know, traditionally the main focus of the series is always the rubber tire 25.5 2 cell. You know, but we had enough interest in guys just wanting to try, you know, something else that has kind of harbored an open segment. So we'll see. Maybe something comes of that might help, you know, someone like, say, yourself that doesn't, you know, necessarily know like what rubber tires to have, or, you know, maybe there's a better combination of something that exists that, you know, we haven't tried.
What is the entry level car that some like, is it the Tamiya, the F104? Like, is that what somebody would buy getting into this, or would they just go and buy the Exotech car? Or you know, what when somebody is gonna, you know, they're approaching you guys or expressing some interest on Facebook or whatever, you know, where do you steer them?
Yeah, I think both of those are really good options. I think it kind of depends on the person's experience and just their price point. The Tamiya kit is, you know, a lot more reasonably priced than, you know, the X-Rays and the Schumachers and the Exotechs. So if somebody's just wanting to try F1 and doesn't want to like fully commit to, you know, a full-on race car, that's probably their best option. If someone's going to be serious about, you know, wanting to race, then yeah, I mean, the Exotech chassis is phenomenal. I have seen the new 2025 X-Ray car. It seems really impressive. Schumacher stuff's good. There's some really cool race kits out there.
Is CRC still around? Are they still making a car?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh wow.
You don't see too many of them though.
It's more of a carpet sort of design.
Yeah.
I forgot about Schumacher. I remember X-Ray, but I forgot that Schumacher even had a car.
I had a question. So maybe another reason for this not spreading, you know, all around everywhere there's RC. What are the track requirements? Does it need to be indoor, outdoor? Like, can some of the existing RC tracks convert to accommodate F1 classes? Or yeah, what can someone speak to that?
I think the cars are pretty compatible everywhere. The biggest driving factor is just the surface prep. Um, so if it's like an outdoor asphalt track, you know, pretty typically the tracks need to be, blown off and sprayed with, either a syrup or a soda, and that's just to get, the minimum amount of traction required. But any carpet track, the 10th scale Formula One cars are going to be great. I think most all prepped on road asphalt outdoor tracks, they're going to be really good. Um, so I don't think it's really, you know, converting anything. I think people they want to go fast and they want the sedan bar of soap that does 70 miles an hour. And, that's just not the current 10th scale Formula One car. It's a scale class, and they don't do 70 miles an hour down the back straight. And if the track's not perfect, not say not perfect, but if it's not, reasonably prepped, they can be a handful. You can have a, kind of a less fun day.
And
but
they're open wheel.
They're open wheel. So yeah, like a sedan, you can bump doors, no big deal. Hitting somebody's wing or a tire going down the back straight at 30 miles an hour, that's fun once,
Yeah.
It's fun to watch it fly.
Yeah. So
I didn't even think about that. I mean, I feel dumb for even admitting that I hadn't thought about that, but I mean, that's like a whole other level of, especially
the rhetoric.
Yeah, Formula One is challenging, but I think that's what makes it fun. Wouldn't you say, Thad?
Oh yeah, yeah, and the group that we run with, I mean, let's say the A main or the top guys, there's some really, really close racing, but everyone kind of feels each other out, or they know, when you got to give up room or let a guy inside. And I think for the most part, everyone does a really good job at handling the fact that they are open wheel. Obviously, there's a lot of incidences where, you get right up on someone or, coming out of pit lane or whatever. That's, you're not going to have with a touring car, but it definitely makes it more challenging, a more challenging racing,
but more rewarding too.
Right.
Yeah.
The rhetoric I had always heard was that like really F1 RC is really like the most difficult sort of RC racing you can do because of that margin of error being basically non-existent. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you look at touring cars.
Right.
You can rub with touring cars. 8 scale. You really don't want to bang wheels with 8 scales, but those things are built like tanks. You can bang them all day long. And I mean, they're jumping, these massive gaps and landing and being fine. Formula One cars, it means we're like real Formula One. You get the real touring cars, the Australian V8s were probably like banging into each other every now and then. You see any of the Formula One cars banging into each other? You can't. Same thing with the RC ones. You just can't touch. But like Thad said, most of the guys that we race with understand that if you touch, somebody's losing and you don't want to be that person to lose. So it happens, but for the most part, everybody's really cool about waiting the 2 or 3 corners, finding a gap and then going through. And the guy that's being passed understands I left that open. I got to back off because you're going to break and you're going to lose points. And it's a different type of driving for sure. But it's so rewarding when you finally get that car dialed in, you get the tire selection right, and you're ripping around the track, and you make a pass on somebody, and it was clean, and it was good. It's a thrill, man. It's like probably one of the best thrills that I've had racing RC cars because it does take. There's a reward to driving it clean.
Right.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
especially if the peer group understands that too, right?
Right.
One question I did want to ask to piggyback on that is like kind of vague, but the racecraft with that because of what we're just talking about, but like field top to bottom based off what you guys have seen, like one, like how, like what is really the gap like in the field in terms of like total pace, but then also too like for the guys that have just gotten like the guys that get into it and that maybe didn't have as much experience in the F1 arena, like how much did you see that racecraft improve, or was it just very not a coefficient factor with that?
I think you kind of have to build a racecraft. You kind of have to. I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to go fast, it's not necessarily the best setup because the tires have been gotten so good that the tires kind of make up for your lack of potential car setup.
Wow.
But driving around the track clean, no mistakes, slowly getting faster. We've seen some guys that have come out and have been decent in the first half, but have never been
Yep.
top 5 drivers. And slowly you can see them inching up. And you watch the scoreboard, you're like, holy cow, he got a third, a fourth, and a fifth. He got a third, a third, a third. He got a second, fourth, and like they're getting better because they're learning how to drive the car. And once you learn how to drive the car clean and smooth, it's all about smooth. Once you learn that, you get faster, and you just like you can see these guys getting, and it's a little scary because I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose to that guy. You know what I mean? Like,
But it probably
I
helps
think-
to like so much of the focus like actually being on like racing time though too, not just like spinning
Right.
timed laps.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
It kind of forces that.
yeah,
That makes
I
sense.
think the one segment that is maybe the easiest to transplant driving style wise is two-wheel buggy. I think how they rotate in the corner and how you kind of load the car going into the corner is the most comparable. Obviously,
Really?
there's not supposed to be jumps. Hitting dots fast enough, there are jumps. But that's like when someone will ask me like, well, what do they drive like? And that's always kind of my go-to answer is like they rotate and they break traction most similarly to like a two-wheel buggy.
Right. Which
That's
for off-road
cool.
was
I had
always
no
really
idea.
considered that like driver's class because of
Yeah, exactly. Which
that makes sense.
yeah, that totally makes sense now, especially
rolling
with
on
what
the
you were
throttle,
saying,
you're rolling
Trav,
off the
about it being
throttle. Yeah.
difficult. Wow. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about, people hacking and stuff with this type of racing. Like that was a question I hadn't even had in my mind until you guys had started talking about that. I mean, it's you've got a 50-50 chance of wadding yourself up or the guy next to you. So I mean, it's like nobody's really gonna necessarily hopefully be like willing to take that chance. So I mean, most incidents probably are the legitimate racing incidents that actually do happen. I mean, I'm guessing.
Yeah, the cars have gotten way more durable, probably in the last 5-6 years. As far as just, ripping the front right arms off the car, like that's far less common than it was then. But you still have tweak, you still, do you hit the wall and now your wings dragging on the ground, and you can't turn in one direction, or
Springs.
the front springs can collapse, your tire can get cut or unglued, and then you can't have any traction come out of the corner. You can strip out your spur gear, which is a famous one,
Big one,
just
yeah.
because it's an exposed drive line.
Oh yeah, huh?
Someone runs into the back of your car just right. There's nothing left of that gear. So it's definitely it's rewarding of consistency and good preparation and racecraft, and being just mindful of your surroundings. 12 minutes is a long time when you're trying to drive fast in something that can fly off the track.
Are you allowed to make changes between qualifying and race?
Yep.
Can you?
Yeah.
Because I think in
Yeah.
real Formula One, they don't want you to make any changes between qualifying and the race.
Yeah, we don't lock down
Don't follow
or
that.
freeze the cars from any type of changes or anything, but we just ask that the person try and use the same chassis, so we don't have somebody just like wholesaling, like grab car A, B, C,
Right.
just to try and find something. Like, whatever car you qualify with, we want you to keep running.
Now, I never got to the point in racing where I would notice a difference with like aero stuff, like different bodies and things like that. But with you guys, does it actually matter enough to where you can tell the difference between like a late model and an earlier model F1 body on the track? I mean, do you have that much of a feel for it? Like like guys do, let's say, running like a cab forward 2-wheel drive buggy body versus, you know, a standard one?
I think wings are a more important factor
Yeah.
than the body. I've
Yeah.
tried a bunch of different bodies, and
Front and rear, or just like the
you
combination of
can,
the two?
yeah,
Or-
there's the front wing actually has different winglets on there. You can remove or have more front wing or less angle, or remove them completely. And the rear wing, I know Thad has tried 4 or 5 different. He brings 4 or 5 different wings with him because they do make a difference. I haven't done that yet. I do have a bag over here of wings because his car was really good last year, and I'm like, it's probably what I'm missing is my wings. So I do have a
There
bunch
you
of
go.
wings I'm going to start bringing with me, but you know, it does make a difference.
Wow. Haley, didn't you build DRS into your?
So I
Right.
3D printed I 3D printed the rear wing, and I went and made an incision in the program to cut off a piece. So I kind of did it, but I didn't actually get the mechanism to go up and down. But yeah, I used the OpenRC. It's like a fully 3D printed RC car, OpenRC, all free, 1/10 scale, 3D printable F1. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So, and they release, since like F1, pretty much every year they're making changes to the chassis, and I think 2026 they're making some pretty major ones to the wings and getting rid of DRS. So yeah, to keep up with like the scale aspect would be challenging with F1 because they make so many changes to the chassis.
Yeah, because
even within a season.
Right. Yeah, because I was curious if that's something you guys had ever looked into, you know, was doing, you know, a DRS zone and stuff like that, or if that's even something that's feasible, you know, how you would make something like that work, or, you know, because I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, how ridiculous do you want to get with the scale stuff and everything? And like, was that ever a conversation that you guys had had?
I mean, I think it's totally possible that somebody could do that. I think it would be completely fair game. I would question how long it would live.
Right.
And that's the one issue, is that it would be great until it wasn't, and then
Right.
you have 8 minutes left of agony.
The one thing
So,
that
yeah, I
we
mean,
did look at.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's it.
The one thing that we did look at maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago, Aaron actually found a speed control that came out that had a push to pass. So you
Yeah.
can
What?
push, and
Really?
it would bump the
Give a little
RPM up
boost.
a certain amount. So we were looking at potentially adding that to the series as a DRS.
Yeah, that's what
Um,
F1's doing next year. Is they're going to add a boost and get rid of DRS.
And
Yeah,
you
it
could,
was.
yeah, you could
It had
set,
a.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it had a secondary module that would go in line, so it plug into the speed control, and then it would plug into a third channel, and basically it had a timer on it, so you could tune the speed control to be like a 3-second turbo boost, a 5-second turbo boost, but the trick is that you only had 30 seconds available, so you could split it up however you wanted. You could
Oh,
have
really?
10 3-second
That's pretty
boosts,
cool.
but you were only allowed 30 seconds. So
That is
that was
so rad.
something
That would have been
that
cool.
Yeah, that would have been really cool. But then people would have to spend money, and
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to force people to.
Yeah,
Having
that's
another
tough
barrier
because
to
I mean, it's
entry.
like there's definitely going to be the people that are like, "Oh, that's sick. I want to do that," and then there's going to be the guys that are the same dudes that complain about how expensive transponders are and stuff.
Right.
Exactly. So, so yeah, there's all kinds of stuff we're always looking at, but that was one of the cooler ones.
That is rad. Like that's pretty next level. That would have been really neat.
I know that we're kind of getting towards the end
Yeah,
here, so I just wanted to make like one final point of like, you know, just chiming in on what you guys are doing with UF1. I really love that you guys have built an RC series that like caters to the scale, but is still very demanding of driver, and that like, and racing, and like really like these first principles. And, you know, I think that that's something that's like, you know, Jay hit on it a little bit, but it was like, where in a lot of other RC disciplines, we've not moved a whole lot, and we spend a lot of time doing anything but racing. And so then you kind of get to that point where it's like, what kind of quality racing are you getting? So I love that at the end of the day, like the emphasis is put on that, like you have to have it all together. And because, you know, It's kind of like the whole like forced growth doesn't feel good sort of thing, but you know, everybody who participates in it comes out better for it. So I really like what you guys are doing there, and especially to hear that it's been around as long as it has. I hadn't realized. So that's pretty awesome, and I commend the work that you guys are doing there for sure.
Good job, Aaron.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
No.
needed. I mean, this is exactly what it's something fresh, you know? I mean, it's just this is what we need. And I think it's also probably kind of why drifting is blown up the way it has too, is it's just you show up at a track and it's like you want to drive, like you want to spin laps and stuff. It's like a 5-minute qualifier and, you know, like a 7-minute main or whatever. Like that's not a rad 12-hour day. You know, I mean, like that's a lot of time spent at a track to just not do a whole lot of driving. And like, I think that's maybe one of the things with drifting is it's like guys will go out and they'll just burn like an entire pack and then another one right after that, you know, and it's like you're wanting to drive and like a 12-minute main, that's rad because like F1 races are long, you know, like they're a long race. And so that's
as opposed
cool
to the 6-minute carpet off-road races we're getting.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, it's like that opens the door for, like you're saying, like more racecraft, more strategy. The fact that you guys are incorporating in pit stops, that's next level. I mean, like that's awesome. I mean, that should be like a no-brainer for more types of scale racing and stuff. I mean, even like if they did like more like endurance style racing and stuff, I think would be fun and something that could help revive on-road. You know, it's just, I really feel like some of this stuff gets to the point where they've just like RC'd the shit out of it to where it's just like everything else and it's not that appealing to people, you know? And like, if somebody were to do something like, let's say, and this would be a perfect thing for like you guys or like Jeremy D. If somebody were to start doing RC rallycross and actually have like a Joker lap in RC racing would be epic. That would add such an awesome fun factor to it, you know? And it's just, I really hope that more people follow this model that you guys are doing, because it's like, man, we're all there to drive at the end of the day, you know? And it's just the standing around and the waiting, and it's just, that's like the grind that has just made me not want to get back into RC racing, you know? Like
Well, so yeah, on that note real quick, like since we're at the end, like could you guys walk us through like what like the time slate schedule looks like for a day, you know, for a race day?
Yeah. So typically, like whenever the track opens, so let's say, 8 a.m., we'll have a couple hours of practice. I have a Bluetooth speaker that pumps out awesome V10 F1 engine noises.
Yeah.
And the Formula One music.
Every hour, yes.
So rad.
That's awesome.
Team, yeah. Then we'll do drivers meeting, 10 to say 10:30. We do our concourse. Concourse winner gets extra points. Qualifying is not very long because it's only, everybody gets one 10-minute session. So essentially it's the heat sheet for the day and you get your 10-minute session. So qualifying is really, a little more than an hour. So, we're 10:30, 11:30, we're talking, then we might do some lunch, and then, noon to, 3, 4, is
Maybe.
usually kind of our day.
That's pretty lax. That's pretty lax
awesome.
schedule too.
And there's, I don't think anyone's ever feeling super rushed. Sometimes I think maybe we have too much practice in the morning, but it seems to work out. Like we try to run on Saturdays. That way, if someone's got to drive, we get guys driving in from Arizona and Vegas for these races.
Wow.
So, it gives them time to either get back to their hotel or drive back or whatever they want to do. Gives me some time to do points. One other thing we didn't talk about with this series that is vastly different is the way that the mains and the points are scored. It's scored based on your like finishing laps in time. So say you have a terrible round of qualifying, your wheel flies off and you don't get 3 laps and you're the fastest guy on the track. You're going to be in the slowest heat, right? Because you didn't really technically qualify. But you can go out and still win the day. So if you go out and have the fastest overall round, like for the main for that round, you win that round. So do that 3 times and you win the day. So even if you have a poor appearance in qualifying, you're still eligible to get really good points for the day, and that's definitely something that's different than a normal RC race. Is you could have a bad couple of qualifiers and it's qual points, and you kind of sat there for 3 or 4 days for 5 minutes of why am I here.
Right.
With our format with UF1, you're still probably going to have not as much fun because you're not with the fast guys, but you can still win. You can still have a top 3. If you're trying to win the series, it still gives you the opportunity.
You guys kicked around the idea of doing sprints. That's the last question I had. Then we can get going. I was just curious if that would even be something that would be fun.
Yeah, I think it's something we've talked about. I think it's a lot to ask more of the once a month thing, because I still want to support local tracks and their race program, and I don't want to have a series that goes completely year round. And I don't want to start double stacking weekends and things and taking away from clubs that really have to make a living at this.
Right.
We're just a bunch of F1 nerds that want to show up to your track on an off day and race. So we try and have a good relationship with the tracks and honor their schedules, and don't try to push too hard for too many races. We want to get everybody involved and be consistent, but not overdo it.
A lot of
That's good. Yeah, that's the key right there.
For sure.
Wow. Well, thank you guys so much. It was awesome being able to hear about all this, and I learned like a lot more about your series that I thought I had already known. So it's really cool. And just, again, great job. I think that the hobby needs more stuff like this. So thank you for that.
Thanks for the invite. It was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for having us.
Having us.
You
So
bet
it's
we'll
one-
have to.
One
go ahead.
last question before we kill this is what's everyone's picks for race winner for Bahrain? That's mandatory before we go.
I forgot about Chris Trudeau's questions too.
Do you have some?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't have them
We can do
pulled up.
those.
In the meantime,
Yeah, go. You guys go ahead. I'll find them.
Piastri.
I'm going to say Lando Norris.
Piastri.
I think Leclerc's got it.
We haven't seen much of him this year so far.
I know, that's what I'm saying. He's gonna. That's because I have him picked for my fantasy league, so I need him to show up.
Okay, so Chris Trudeau, who on social media goes by Checkered Pass 503, says probably question for Tony. Does parking lot racing need to make more of a resurgence to grow an interest in on-road racing? Has on-road gotten too competitive and too expensive with the frequency of chassis releases, and do we need to return to simpler times of Tamiya and HPI racing events?
Yes. It's gotten out of hand to the point where you feel like you need $1,000 car to go racing,
right?
and you have to have a super nice track that's been blown off, that's been, perfect tires, the track's been blown off, it's been sauced. Yes, if it needs to go back to more of the like the TCS style stuff, where it's the bone stock Euro truck, the GT spec kind of car, where they're all spec. I think if those were offered more, or somehow could get integrated more into the race program, that you get more people, because it's inexpensive and it's fun to drive. It's fun to race. But I don't think the tracks feel like they don't cater to the beginner as much as most tracks cater to the pro. And I think that's, at least here, I kind of feel like when you show up, it's very cliquey, and it's very, if you're not in with that group, you just better sit over to the side. And that's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah.
I feel like that's RC racing in general, but yeah, maybe more so for
Yeah,
a
that's
niche like
true.
F1.
Huh?
Yeah.
So you guys kind of also sort of answered this, I'm guessing, just from what your guesses were for Bahrain. But question for the panel: how much do they follow F1, and who's their favorite driver and team?
Alonso. Old guys rule.
So you like old things, apparently. Oh, I gotta stay with Michael Schumacher. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd stay with Schumacher too.
yeah.
I guess I'm a Sainz fan because that's my first foray into F1. So, but now on Williams, it's very hard to be a
You're
Sainz fan
torn.
and also a Williams fan. So I like Ferrari. I mean, it's pretty much, I think if you're an F1 fan, you like most of the drivers. You kind of follow. There's a couple that I don't like. I won't like shout anyone out, but mostly you just you kind of like, they switch around teams too, so it's hard to follow an individual or constructor or an individual. It's hard to pick.
Just really quick, I know we're trying to get going here, and I apologize, guys, but this was something I wanted to ask you earlier, Haley. What drew you to F1? Like, what about it like caught your eye to the point of where you're like traveling to races to go check it out? I mean, like that. None of us.
I was invited to a
taken it that
race,
far.
and I was like, I'm not going to go to a race and know nothing about it. So, and then I learned about there's an RC version. I'm like, this is perfect. So that was kind of like my foray. Is like, I'm going to build an RC replica of one of the cars, and bring it to the race. And that was basically my video for Barcelona. Yeah,
That's cool.
so it was fun. Yeah, scaled it out for sure. Probably sucks with racing, but.
Who's your favorite driver, Adam?
I tell you, couldn't tell you. This is like a foreign language to me.
Is he still awake?
Yeah.
He thinks we've been talking about import cars this whole time. Cars with big old wings and spoilers.
Oh, I know what F1 is. I just don't follow it.
And you hate supercars. Do you hate speed? Is that your thing? Is you just
No, I wouldn't say that's it. It's just, I don't know. I come, like you already nailed it on the head. I come from like an off-road truck background. Ever since I was a little kid, it was always trucks. Like, go to the old school Scholastic book fair. I never cared about all those, the Porsche posters and all that stuff. But if it was a Bigfoot poster, a K5 Blazer, I was all over it.
That's rad. No, that's cool. I mean, you're into what you're into, and it's like it's just as interesting to hear why somebody's not necessarily a fan of it as it is for someone who is a fan. You know what I mean? Like it's like, we have the things that make it appealing to us, but what is, there's something about it that just doesn't grab your attention, and so
and honestly, I couldn't tell you what it is because it's not really speed. I mean, speed. Like
is it the driver's accents?
No, like I said,
I
don't know what it. I don't know. I just don't know what it is. I really just don't know why that
no American drivers.
They tried.
Cadillac's coming to F1 though. That should make you happy, right?
I guess. I don't know.
Only if it's Escalade.
I don't know if it's on 37s or bigger.
The front wing is just a grill.
Chrome.
I love it. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. We'll let you go for reals this time. So.